Good evening. Last week we started the chapter Spirits During Wars. We did the first two questions. It's 541, that the first one of the item. We did the first two. I'm going to ask Philip to read from the beginning, to read the first, second, and third. So we'll comment again the couple of those that we commented last week, and we'll continue with the new one for this week. Okay, Philip?
541. Are there spirits who help and support each side fighting in a battle? Yes, and who inspire their courage as well. Ancient populations represented the gods as taking sides for a group of people. Those gods were nothing more than spirits represented by allegorical figures. 542. There can only be one right side in any war. How can spirits support the wrong side? You know very well that there are spirits who seek conflict and destruction. For them, war is war. They do not care whether it is fair or not. 543. Can spirits inspire a general in planning a campaign? Of course. Spirits can use their influence for this or any other conceivable plan.
Okay, so the first thing that is important for us, and I didn't mention last week, but I'm going to mention today, is we are talking here on spirits during wars. We're not talking about the wars specifically. We're talking how the spirits, what role do spirits play during the war, right? Being on this side or on the other side. Of course, we cannot talk about spirits during wars without talking about wars itself. But that's not, there is another set of questions here in the Spirits book when they talk about wars. When you have the chapter on destruction, they talk specifically about wars and the role that wars have, and if the spirits, Kardec asks the spirits if they have any, if they are in God's plan or it's not God's plan, and things like that. And we know war is caused by our own free will. But here specifically, we're talking about the role of spirits during wars. So, of course, we discussed this last week. We will have spirits on both sides, incarnates and discarnates. Spirits that died, soldiers died during the war, they may continue fighting on the other side without noticing they have died, or knowing they have died, but still they continue with the same ideas and continue with the same intentions, right? And we talk about the right or wrong side during wars, right? And again, there is always those that start, right? And those are the real responsible. But that's the beginning. Then after that, you have two sides fighting, and you have disruptions of the real intentions on both sides. So I'm not saying here that we can only we blame everybody. I'm not talking about blame. I'm talking about in a war there are two sides, and both sides will make mistakes, and both sides will be responsible for actions that are not very correct. And war in general is a very difficult state, right? Last week we talked about the who's really responsible, and the cause and consequence, and if a soldier is fighting in a war, how much responsibility the soldier has. And again, you are following orders. If you are following orders and you are not deviating from these orders, not being cruel, not being harmful to above the line of duty, then you have very little responsibility because you are following orders. Again, in this country where you are not conscripted, you choose to go to war, your responsibility increases because now you are choosing to fight and you know what you are doing. You're still following orders. If you still do not abuse your what you are doing, you are not responsible as as the generals and the responsible for the wars, but the fact that you made a choice to go to war gives you more responsibility than a soldier, for instance, in Russia now, that they are conscripted, many of them, and they have to go to war without even understanding why they go to war. Just as an example, the difference. At the time of Kardec, when he asked these questions, there was no volunteer. You were all conscripted to go to war, right? You could always volunteer, right? You hear about the civil war here in this country, that many people volunteered to go. But besides volunteering, you were conscripted in most of the cases, right? So, the first question of this week, which is if the spirits can inspire a general. The spirits can inspire anyone during the battle to do good and to do bad, to avoid making things worse and to cause more damage. Depends on, of course, we choose to hear or we choose to not hear what the spirits are telling us, right? And this happens also with the soldiers, with the generals, with all the commanders, right? So spirits will be involved in both trying to minimize the damage, right? One thing that is important, they understand that we are eternal souls. They understand that there is no physical death. There is no death because they are on the other side. They know we are eternal spirits. So their view of a war are different from our view from a war, right? We're fighting for a cause and we're fighting to survive. They are not fighting to survive. They know that we are eternal souls. But still, their material, physical remembrances and tendencies can motivate them to take sides and to try to make things worse or try to make things better, but with a different perspective because they are on the other side. Okay, that's important also. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, so 544.
Could bad spirits suggest unwise plans to them in order to lead them to defeat? Yes, but don't human beings have free will? If a general's judgment does not enable him to distinguish between a good idea and a bad one, he will have to bear the consequences of his blindness. Besides, perhaps it would be better for him to take orders rather than give them.
So again, it's a continuation of what we discussed, right? The important thing here is we have free will. We can listen or we can ignore the suggestions from the spirits, both good and bad, both sides. It's our own free will. And if a general, as they say here, cannot distinguish between a good idea and a bad one, he'll have to face the consequence. We have to face the consequence on our actions. We cannot blame the spirits for our own actions. Of course, they will be responsible for trying to influence us on their own personal journey, but we cannot blame spirits for decisions we make, choices we make. We can always say, well, I received this inspiration or this guidance and I followed the guide. But again, it's our free will. So it's the same thing in war with generals. They can listen to the spirits or they can ignore the spirits. And if they listen and make choices, they'll be responsible for the consequences of their choices in a war, like in every other aspect of life. Yeah.
I'm remembering recalling of Muhammad Ali. Was it that?
Yes, he refused to go to war. Yeah.
So there was part here spiritually that this man said, no, I'm not going to fight a war that I did not start.
Yes, and he faced the consequences, right?
Did he go to prison?
He went to prison, yes. He went to prison, yeah. He spent some time in prison. And again, you see, our free will allows us to make those choices. There were those that left the country
Right.
Yeah. Yes. And I was actually watching a spiritist lecture today about war, because I was trying to see if I could learn a little bit more about what we were going to study today. And the speaker was saying that he lived here in the US in the 80s. And he was talking to a veteran one day, a Vietnam War veteran. And this veteran told him, if I could give a suggestion to whoever wants to go to a war, leave the country before you go to war. Leave your country, because it's not worth. The trauma that you carry from the war, it's something that I never recovered, I cannot recover, and I would have rather, Vietnam, you were forced to go, right? I would have rather left the country, because in the end, our country is the world, is not our, the one where you were born. And I thought it was interesting. Again, I'm not, I'm not taking sides. I'm just reporting what he said, that, war causes a lot of damage. And we see this happening all around, right? It's still PTSD, traumas from wars and everything. So, it's very difficult. War is something, it's a primitive thing that we still carry, humankind still carries, that eventually will disappear. This is what they say on the later on the Spirit's book, right? As we evolve, wars will disappear, but until then, we need to deal with it, right? And we need to, and like you said, Soraya, sometimes we have to make choices, and I know what I would do for myself. Of course, now I wouldn't, because I'm too old for that. But I agree that I don't think that going to war is the right.
My brother went to Vietnam. Came back and spoke a few times of the tragedy and unbelievable things he went through. He couldn't speak much. He couldn't tell us what went on. But there's certain things that he did say that it was.
Can you hear her or no?
Not really.
No? Yeah.
Okay.
You need to speak louder,
Okay.
people, so people online can hear you.
No,
So
I'm saying that our brother went to Vietnam and he spoke after he came out, he spoke about it, but things that he said was unbelievable. Till the time that he passed away, he could not speak of what he went through. And he said certain things that it was.
yeah. Yeah. So it's a very difficult, traumatic experience, and what can we say? We hope that one day, sooner better than later, we won't have any wars. But still, at our stage of evolution, unfortunately, there is a lot of people that like wars. There are volunteers that a couple of Americans died in Ukraine this week that volunteered to go there, right? Yeah, it's mercenaries. Yeah, so it's our stage of evolution as humankind, and we can only pray and hope that things will continue improving, because they are, but they continue improving and improve faster than they are. Okay. All right.
545.
Yeah.
Can a type of second sight or intuitive perception show him the result of his plans beforehand and guide a general sometimes? This often happens with men and women of genius. This kind of intuition is called inspiration and causes them to act confidently. It comes to them from the spirits who direct them and who act upon them through the abilities gifted to them.
So when I talk about, we discuss second sight, intuition. One thing I hear that as we study Spiritism is important to make a difference for our understanding of the influence of spirits and how we think is, the difference between inspiration and intuition. A lot of people think they are the same, right? According to us spiritists, intuition comes from you. Can be from your past, can be from, but it comes from inspiration, comes from the spirits that will inspire you to do something or choose a way, one way or another. So I thought you were here. So it's again, this is according to spiritism. You go out there and you see people saying the same thing, that's fine. As like we say in spiritism, soul is an incarnated spirit. Out there, soul is many different things, right? So according to spiritism, intuition comes from you, the spirit. Inspiration is something that you receive from someone else that is trying to help or not help you, okay? So, of course, this, going back to the question, right? A general can have this intuition or the inspiration to choose one direction or another, and you know, and act on this this intuition or inspiration. Okay. Okay.
546.
Yeah.
In the disorder and confusion of a battle, what happens to the spirits of those who die? Do they continue to take an interest in the struggle after their death? Some of them do, others pull away from it. In war, as in all other cases of violent death, the spirit's first feeling is one of shock. It does not know that it is dead and seems to be taking part in the ongoing action. The reality of its situation becomes apparent gradually.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question here. What happens to the soldiers that died during the battle, right? Again, we know that each case of discarnation is individual, is not, there are not two equal cases of discarnation. So if a soldier is fighting in the war against his will, he's there because he's forced to. The moment that he's killed, he can move away from the battle. He was not interested there to be there in the first place, right? So the moment he regains, he or she, nowadays we have some women going to war also. So he or she regains conscience on the other side, they can move away from the battle and go where they, you know, try to be rescued, be taken somewhere else. Now, soldiers that are there fighting because they believe in the cause and they are really committed to what they are doing, if they are killed, many cases, they will continue fighting the war, thinking they are still alive, or if they know they are dead, trying to guide and inspire others that are there being part of the war. So each case will be a case, but the basic difference will be how much are you invested in the war yourself. That will depend, that will cause what is going to happen to you.
I have a comment, I guess. The ones that do stay fighting, I could call them that they are suffering from kind of fixation.
Yeah, you can call a fixation, yeah.
Fixation because they are so self-absorbed in their conflict, they don't see anything else, so they are fixated.
Yeah.
While others probably are not fixated, they realize their spirits and they continue to fight, inspiring other people. So there, you could say that there are two types, and the other one that just just goes away.
Yeah.
So you could have that within that type, that one that stays in the struggle to inspire.
Yes.
To inspire. That's trying to use the right
Inspire,
terminology.
yes.
And the ones that actually stay fixated.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You
Am
know,
I right to say?
yes.
Okay.
Cases, yeah. You heard Paco, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. If someone is speaking and you are not hearing, let us know. So I'll ask them to speak louder here. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's
That's a good
Yeah,
observation.
that's the point. And the next question follow this one, which is an interesting one also, right? Philip.
Do spirits who fought opposing side of each other during battle still see each other as enemies after they die? Are they still furious with one another? Under such circumstances, a spirit is never calm. At first, it may feel enraged with its enemy and even pursue it. When it has recovered its composure, it sees that its animosity is fruitless. Nonetheless, it may retain some traces of it for a longer or shorter period of time, depending on its character. Does it still hear the battle's cry? Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so that's very interesting, right? What happens with the spirits of two opposite sides, right? Again, it goes back to what Paco was explaining here. Depending on what's the status of their interest in the fight, they will either continue seeing them as enemies. If they were not interested in the fight, they won't see them as enemies and move away, or they
Eventually, just wake up.
Yeah. So, but when you imagine that you are there because you believe in the cause, but the losing of your physical body, the discarnation, causes a shock that makes you reevaluate your priorities, right? What I was doing here, why did I lose my life over something that I'm sure it happens sometimes, right? So these spirits will move on, right? Because they will understand the futility of what they were doing. But there will be spirits that will continue having exactly the same ideas, will continue to see the enemies as enemies, and will continue to fight in the spiritual world, right? Again, we know that spirits in the spiritual world can be in opposite sides and fighting against each other. We read many of the André Luiz books talking about the spirits in the spiritual world fighting each other, right? Or trying to persecute each other. So it's very natural that they will continue to do so in the war. Do they still hear the battle's cry? I have trouble understanding what they mean here. I looked at in the original, it's the same, in Portuguese, the same. You know, I think it's the excitement of the war or something like that. They continue to feel, to be part of everything that is happening. But I don't know if anyone knows a better definition of battle's cry than I couldn't find. Luis, I don't know if you heard this expression before.
Battle cry is usually the call of a member of one side to its fellows to move forward, to take the battle.
Oh, that's what battle's cry. Thanks, Phil. Okay. So yes, they will continue to hear that. Yes, I didn't know that. Yes, Ken.
Also, there is often governmental propaganda to actually inspire the most of the population to go forward with war. Those who are unsettled with that may then jump in as well. So there's an outside influence on the physical world as well to propagate a go into war.
Which is what's happening in Russia right now, right? The government is blocking all the information against the war and using the propaganda to defend their actions there, right? So yeah, so you know the spirits, of course, they will continue listening to if they are interested. Again, if they're interested, they'll continue hearing the appeals and the calls to war. Okay, the last one.
548. When a spirit is casually watching a battle as a spectator, does it witness the separation of souls and bodies of those who are dying? How does this phenomenon affect it? Very few deaths are truly instantaneous. In most cases, when the body dies, the spirit is not yet aware of it. When it begins to come to, its spirit may be seen moving beside its corpse. This appears so natural that the sight of its dead body does not produce any horrible effect. As the life of the individual is concentrated in its spirit, the spirit alone attracts the attention of those around it. They converse with this spirit and may even give it orders.
Okay, that's a very interesting question, right? The first thing here, why would you be a spectator on the battle of a war, right? So your interest there is already the first thing that you have to question, right? If you are there as a way of helping the victims, or you are there out of curiosity, like people that like to watch these fights or these things that happen here, that those violent fights and that we have as sports nowadays. So but the question is, if you are there watching it, you see the separation of the soul or the spirit separating, and the answer from the spirits is an interesting one, right? When you are there, you are spirit in the spiritual world, you are focused on the spirits that are going to, so when a spirit detaches from the physical body, you are focusing on the spirit, not in the physical body that is left behind, because that's your interest in the spiritual world. Of course, you may see the separation if that's your focus. Again, remember, we need to understand what's the focus, right? The example that we say, right? You walk on Fifth Avenue and then you see 100 people, you don't pay attention, you cannot describe any one of them after one because you're not focusing, you're not interested, right? So if you're there watching it, if you're not interested in seeing the separation of the spirit from the physical body, you see only the spirit after it's separated or, the disconnect. But if you're there because you are interested in learning, let's say André Luis type, you're interested of learning more about how the separation happens when you die in a violent death. So you see the separation, the physical body and the spiritual body. But the process doesn't shock them as it shocks us, because they see it from a different perspective, right? They understand it from a different perspective. So if they are there for the curiosity of things, the physical body dying will cause no impression because they're interested in the battle. If they are there to help, to assist the spirit separating from the physical body, what happens to the physical body is of no interest, because you understand that the spiritual body, the physical body is only matter, so it's left behind. So you are interested in the spirit. So the focus is on the spirit that is separate. Okay, so it's a different point of view from us that are seeing it from as incarnates. We are seeing the damage on the physical body and would cause, difficulties in watching it. Okay, that was the last on this.
Danny,
Yes, Luis.
I understand, or at least from what we read, we understand that there's a period between the body dying and the spirit recovering conscience. And it's not very fast from what we read. But for some reason, this part of the codification, I don't know how you call that in English. How do you call it?
What?
When someone dies, the spirit does not wake up immediately. There's a period
State
of
of
time.
confusion. The spirit stay in a state of confusion, right?
Yeah, well, the word in Portuguese is better, but anyway.
What's the word in Portuguese?
It went out of my mind because I'm speaking in English and it's tough to remember things in Portuguese when I'm speaking in English. I'll tell you later. But anyway, this part of the codification doesn't really take that into account. Why do you think is that? Because, you know, it looks like the guy will die and just wake up and continue fighting or walking around or separating of the body. And we understand it doesn't happen that fast.
Yeah,
But-
I think that what happens, you are right that in most of the cases it doesn't happen that fast. But I think what happens here in the case of war and violent death is that the spirits are not aware of the death and they continue to act as if they were still alive. If you remember the movie Ghost, in the beginning when he's killed and immediately he jumps out of the body. I know it's a Hollywood movie, but it is more or less what they are describing here, right? That you separate from your physical body, you don't understand that, and you are still all active and acting as if you were still alive. So I think that what they are describing here are special circumstances, and I understand the concept behind it of a soldier dying, the physical body dying, and then continue to be active as if it was alive without. Because it is part of the state of confusion. They are not fully aware that they have died. They continue acting as if they were alive and the physical bodies died. So I understand the concept behind it and what really happens. When we talk about what you were describing, which is what happens to the majority of discarnations, is that the spirit, when it discarnates, it goes into a state of confusion, in a state of sometimes
Perturbation is the expression in Portuguese. Perturbation.
Perturbation, yes, a perturbation. But you see these cases here. You can be in a state of perturbation and be active and acting like you were still alive. This is because the perturbation state, meaning not being fully aware of your state. But if you are sleeping or awake or acting, it can be all the above, right?
Well, I understand what you are saying, but sort of I don't buy it. If you read question 155, I have it in Portuguese here. In instance of that, the separation is gradual. It could take days, weeks, even months. If you read, Voltaire, even when he's conscient, it takes time for him to recover his movement. So I sort of, I think it's an inconsistency. I don't know why, and I was curious about your opinion. So your opinion essentially is that those guys who die in battle, represent a special case.
Well, not in specifically in war, but the type of death that is a violent death can cause the spirit to continue pretending that it's alive or feeling that it's alive and continue, acting on it. Yes, I heard about this. So it doesn't. I think it's the exceptions, but I think it's
a good theory. I would love to have some reference, to support it. But it's a good theory. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll search and I'll come back to you. Maybe on Sunday when we have the Q&A. You bring that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I kind of missed his point.
What he's saying is that according to question 155, right, Luis?
Yes.
Yeah, the spirits explain that the process of death, the separation, the disconnection between the physical body and the spirit, not physical disconnection that takes up to 72 hours, but the separation, the mental separation, the awareness of you can take days, weeks, or months. So he says, so in that case, how do they immediately appear to be acting right after they were killed, right? And my understanding is that the cause of that, the violent death can cause them to continue, not enter into this process of understanding of the perturbation can be a perturbation of you thinking you're still alive and acting as if you're still alive. But again, let's
you look at
research more.
If you look at it from the standpoint of someone actively pursuing an enemy, the impact of them physically dying may not come to their attention. But then they would continue to do what they were doing moments before until they realize they have no ability to affect the other party.
Yeah, I think you're right, Philip. I think it's exactly that. It's exactly how they act. Yes. Okay. Okay, now new item, pacts.
Shall I?
Yes, go ahead.
549. Is there any kind of truth to pacts formed with malevolent spirits? No, there is no such thing as a pact. It is merely sympathy between a vile nature and despicable spirits. For example, imagine you want to irritate your neighbor, but you do not know how. You can call out for the assistance of lower order spirits. These spirits, like yourself, want nothing more than to do wrong, and in return for the help they give you, they expect you to help them. This does not mean that your neighbor will not be able to fight such a conspiracy with an opposing scheme and the force of his or her own will. If you desire to do evil, you call wicked spirits to your assistance by that desire alone, and you are in turn obliged to serve them as they have served you, because they need your help in the evil they seek to do. What you call a pact consists simply in this mutual assistance in doing wrong. Human beings sometimes find themselves dependent on wicked spirits, and this stems from submitting to the bad thoughts suggested by them, and not from any sort of agreed upon stipulations. The idea of a pact, in the sense commonly attributed to that word, is a figurative representation of the like-mindedness that exists between bad human beings and malicious spirits.
Yes, the last phrase that Kardec is very important. Okay, so the concept of selling your soul to the devil does not exist in the literal sense, but does exist in the sense that you can associate yourself with low order spirits, with evil spirits, and begin an association that can become an obsession, a possession, subjugation, and all these cases. So it's not that you sold your soul to the devil in the literal sense of it, but the association you make with these low order spirits can cause a lot of harm to yourself, to others. So the pact as we know here and as we use here does not exist. The association between like-minded spirits to act on their evil tendencies does exist and is very common, and we know that, right? So someone that is committing these horrible acts that we read in the newspapers nowadays, they are never alone. They will always have spirits connected to them, trying to influence them and trying to excite them to act on their evil tendencies. Can we call this a pact? We can even call it a pact, right? Because it is an association, but it is not an association in the formal sense. It's not something that is signed in a paper and or written, you know, because the same way that you make the connection, you can disconnect. As long as you elevate your thoughts, you make an effort. Sometimes it reaches a point that you cannot do it by yourself. You need external help of spirits and or incarnate and discarnate. But it is always possible to end this association. You know, it's not that sign, it's not a contract signed that cannot be broken. It's in that sense that the spirits are telling us here. But we know that the associations that we make with every time we, you know, we act on our inferior tendencies, we will have spirits connected to us and trying to influence us.
Can you give a graphic example, you know, following the same one, this one? Example, one thing I want to irritate my neighbor. How do I call a wicked spirit to help me?
You start desiring harm to your neighbor,
Okay.
right?
And then?
And then the spirits that are enemies of your neighbor, they have nothing to do with you. It's not personal with you for them, but they want to hit to attack your neighbor, and they don't have an instrument, so they will use you as an instrument to attack your neighbor. So you associate with the spirits, and the spirits will influence you to act on to cause harm to the neighbor, or only by wishing something bad happening to the neighbor. If the neighbor opens itself because of their own lower vibrations, things will happen to them, you know, strange things will happen to them because they open themselves to receive these negative influences, right? So, you know, you have an accident that, you know, you have a home accident, you fall and you hurt yourself. Why did it happen? Do the spirits cause it to happen? They didn't cause it to happen directly, but indirectly they can distract you, right? You know, they distract you with thoughts, and you don't know what you are doing, or you don't pay attention to what you're doing, and you have a domestic incident. How did this happen? It could be your neighbor wanting something to happen, sending this vibration, a spirit going there and using this, associating this inferior vibration of yours to them, theirs, and causing this.
Then I understand, well, how, now that they did that, they distracted my neighbor, made her fall. But now I have to pay back that spirit.
Yes, you have the consequence of your actions,
Yeah, I
of
have to
course.
pay back the spirit, because he did that to my neighbor. So how do I just want a graphic example, how do I serve that purpose? How do I take it back?
What's the consequence of the action, right? So how you repair the damage you have done?
I necessarily repair it. I wanted my neighbor, I wanted her to help to fall. That spirit got her distracted, and she fell.
Yeah.
But now it says here that I have to pay back the spirit. So how do I pay back?
Pay back the spirit, meaning you open yourself to associate with it. So the spirit you will try to use you for, because you used him or her to cause harm to the neighbor. Now you open yourself to them, and now he or she will use you for their own purposes, for something different. Yeah, so that's the signing the pact with the devil that you made, right?
I just wanted to like a graphic.
Yeah. Again,
Sometimes this could just get lost into intellectual.
what you know, when you open the door of your house to anyone that can come in, you may receive some undesirable visits, right? our mind is the door of our own conscience. If we open the door to the spirits, they will come inside and they may decide not to live. And we may have problems in making them live. Yeah, because of, again, we have our free will, we can make them live, but we may find it difficult because of our own inferior tendencies, right?
But changing your pattern of thoughts,
Yes,
they will
yes,
seek someone else.
yes, exactly. You know, once you open the door, you need to change your mental vibrations for them to disconnect, from them to be separated, right? So that's one we always say, people that come to the Spirit Center, you bring your companions, some of them are kept outside. Some of them are brought inside so they can learn with us because they are ready to learn. But those that are not ready to learn, they are kept outside. So when you live here,
They're waiting for me.
they are waiting. But if you live with your thoughts elevated and don't drop your vibration as soon as you leave, they won't find you. They are waiting there, and you leave and they don't see you leaving because you are vibrating on a different level. So they will keep waiting until they get tired, and then they'll go back to your home because they know where you live or now, right?
Yeah.
But if you continue to vibrate at a high level, they go to your home, but they don't find you.
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna go home and where's Paco?
Yeah, they don't find you. But the difficulty that we have is to keep our thoughts elevated. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Questions?
It all depends on how we live.
Daniela, yes.
So there are like when you associate yourselves or open to this kind of spirits, to, in the case of the neighbor, for example, to harm the neighbor, that's not even you directly, are the spirits who are using you, right? So the spirits are also facing consequences,
Yes.
like for their acts.
Yes.
Like we open the door or we open the mind, and they're using us the first time, and then it might be keeping using us, like you said, maybe it's even like a pact, right? So, and then that's one of the consequences. We are starting already to pay. For the spirits who are, let's say, in charge of their own lives, or they're not fully embraced in the spiritual world, they're still connected to the material world, trying to influence or harm, the consequences they face, it's not like, for example, right away.
No.
They can face the consequences in the next incarnation, or they can face the consequences when they realized that they want to stop and they need help, or because they don't go to jail. I mean, I know there might be.
There are jails in the spiritual.
They are, right?
Yeah.
So, but not led by the good spirits.
No.
Right? They are led by
spirits like them. That yeah.
But that's not the kind of consequences
No.
we want them to face.
No, that's not. No, that's different. They will have to face the consequence. Our actions have cause reaction and have consequence. But how this consequence is going to happen, it can be in the spiritual world, still in the spiritual world, if they repent, they regret, and they start to actively work to repair what they have done, or it can carry to a new incarnation, and they are going to be born in the same family as the neighbor that they caused harm. So to resolve the issue and to readjust with the neighbor, or they can face similar situations with different spirits in order to repair the what they have done, right? So you can evolve through love or through pain. Most of us, unfortunately, choose to go through pain, so that's how we are going to have to face. But They can they evolve, they correct themselves through love? Yes, possible. Very difficult, but possible.
And in the other example you gave, that you said we see in the news, like these extreme cases that we have seen more and more, like people acting and inflicting pain or death to like a large group of people at once.
Yeah.
You said they are usually not alone. It's sort of like easy to see that, right? It's too much even to even realize they can do that by themselves. Like they probably have a legion of spirits,
Yes.
right, working on that. So in that case, the consequences are much worse.
Yes.
Like, you know, you're inflicting like a large group of people and their families in the community. So the spirits could also get away with it in a way, like they're in the spiritual world. They're not going to jail like the guy who did everything might go, or they usually die. So if they die, they
But
might be together as a gang, or it
yeah,
can be anything.
as the gang of these spirits, they may be taken to a more primitive world. That's what happening to many of them, right? And as we go through this transition into a world of regeneration, those that are doing evil for the pure pleasure of doing evil are being transferred to more primitive planets. So the spirits associated with these individuals, if they are in that category, the consequence for them may be losing their last opportunity to reincarnate on Earth and go into a more primitive planet, right?
Yeah, because everything is sort of like translated, and I'm not diminishing it, but easily translated into mental illness, right? Yeah. Because we are here, we are incarnated, and then we are dealing with what we have here. But can we say that about the spirits who are, you know, ganging up on this? They can even be praised themselves, no, from not being really evil spirits, but being caught into this web of darkness.
Yes, so you know, you have a group of spirits there. Not all of them are doing evil for evil. Some of them are just followers, because they are part of the gang, and the gang is doing that, and they need to do that. So these will receive opportunities of redemption, facing the consequences. But these are not going to be. The leaders are going to receive the consequence is going to be more serious, more difficult. They will find themselves facing more challenging consequences. Those that are just followers, again, will face the consequence also, but will be a lesser degree of consequences. But all of them will face serious consequences.
But at the bottom line, we can talk about free will again.
Yes.
Right? So the person had the free will to go on with it or not.
When you decide to join a gang, you decide with your free will, right? Again, I know that's sometimes very difficult in neighborhoods. You're forced.
Exactly.
Things like that. So yeah, so there is a lot of, but again, all these is taken in consideration into the cause and consequence of us as eternal spirits, right? How much you were responsible for it, or how much you were forced to it because of external circumstances. And it will be the case, right? So you have, let's say you have 10 spirits influencing someone that commit a mass murder. Not all 10 of them will face the same consequence. Each one will be a different one according to their involvement and their willingness, understanding, and the use of their free will.
But the person who committed that is the one who is really in charge of the event, like
in charge in the physical world, but sometimes it's less responsible than the spirit chief that influenced. That will be a worse guilty part, because if the person here has a mental imbalance, mental disturbance, and it's influenced by the spirits. You know, a lot of these cases, you hear them saying, I'm hearing voices. I heard a voice that told me to do that, and they follow the voices. They may be less responsible than the spirits that took them to do that. But again, they are responsible to all these barbaric acts. You have a responsibility, right? And those around you also have the responsibility. It goes further. It goes to all those that allow this to happen indirectly, right? Through the gun legislation, through allowing your son or son generally to buy the guns, to educate them in according to thinking that it's right to have a gun. So you see how much you amplify this responsibilities, all responsibilities, right?
The manufacturers.
The manufacturers, yes.
Yeah.
It's indirect responsibility, but there are all degrees of responsibility, right? And we are talking about more difficult extreme cases, but you know, the destruction of the planet in terms of pollution and other things, we are all responsible in a minor or way, but we are all responsible. We cannot claim that we didn't know what was happening. So you see how the responsibility ends up, you know, spreading.
Either major or lesser.
Yes, in the end, we are all responsible. Okay. Okay. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to stop here. Any final questions? Raquel, you had some comment? I thought I saw you raise your hand. No? Okay. All right. So we're going to stop here. So this Saturday, we have a lecture by Marcia Trajano, The Value of Life. She's going to talk about suicide prevention, and our responsibility as spiritists to understand this very important topic. The awareness that we continue beyond the death of our physical bodies, and the focusing on the idea that we are all destined to perfect happiness. We need to be better prepared to help anyone who is undergoing difficulties, moments of pain, and suicide ideation. So it's going to be a very interesting subject this Saturday, okay?
Is it via YouTube?
It's on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube channel, Saturday, 11 a.m. Also on this Sunday, 11 a.m., we have our Q&A session, so please bring your questions. This is online only, the Sunday studies still. The book club that Daniela is conducting is on vacations. They just finished the book 2,000 years ago, and they are going to start 50 years later in August. So if you are part of the book club, you now have a break until August, and then you continue. And if you were not part, you can take your time and read the book 2,000 years ago and prepare yourself for 50 years later, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Sure, thank you, John, and thank you, everyone. Infinite Creator and Supreme